So my name is Stephanie Rogers, and I am a 40-year-old mom of three now, and just had Spencer just turned a year old on February the 19th. I grew up in Caledonia, and I live in Bridgewater. I've been here for about 12 years now. Have family close by, and I work at the local hospital, Social Regional. I'm an RN there, and just currently on maternity leave and looking after Spencer, which takes up a lot of my day. We stay busy, him and I. I've got two older children. One's 12, my daughter Ava, and then I've got Simon, who's almost 10. Actually, she's not 12, she's 13. She just had a birthday too, the 21st. I'm just not used to it yet, 21st of this month. And Simon is going to be turning 10 soon, and he's busy with soccer, and they're both going to school and busy with that kind of stuff. So that takes up most of my time. So I don't really have a lot of leisure time. My husband works away. He works out on the scallop boats. So he's gone usually for about 2.5 weeks at a time, and then he's home for about a week, and then he leaves again. So he's single parenting, I think, pretty much.
That's a loss.
He doesn't really have a specific diagnosis. He's kind of a mystery to them a little bit. He was born at 32 weeks. I had a complete placenta previa with this pregnancy, which I hadn't had with any of the others. So I was at a high risk for bleeding, plus I was an older mom. So they were doing all of my scans at the IWK, and during some time at home, I just got put off work, and I had started having to bleed. So I went into the IWK and didn't know that I wouldn't be coming home again. But I was in there for about a month with complications and 2 major bleeds. And eventually he was delivered by C-section at 32 weeks, 31 weeks and 5 days, but it was close. And he came out screaming, thank God. But during our scans while I was pregnant, they found that he had extra fluid in his ventricles and his brain. And they weren't quite sure what that was going to mean for him when he was born. There was also a geneticist that came in to talk to me, and I was in there by myself. So my husband, I could just kind of fill him in when he called, because he's on a satellite phone, so they don't usually get to make that many calls. But so I was trying to fill him in the best I could. But this geneticist came in, and he said that he would like to do an amnio because he said I had extra fluid, and Spencer had a larger than normal head. He had the extra fluid. He had a 2-vessel cord, so they were concerned about his kidneys. And with the extra fluid that I was carrying, the extra amniotic fluid, all of it together seemed like it would be kind of a genetic storm. So he wanted to do some testing, but I did refuse that just because the amnio was kind of unnecessary, and where I was already at a high risk for having another bleed, I thought, you know what, if there's nothing we can do, we'll wait till he's born, and we'll just go from there and see what we have. So as soon as he was born, he came out crying, and I was so thankful because I was so nervous and scared from all of this. Like, I spent the last 4 weeks of the pregnancy just terrified, on bed rest, just nervous of how he was going to be when he was born, or what we might be dealing with, what kind of challenges, because my other 2 pregnancies and children were born healthy and haven't had any medical issues at all. He did have an MRI while I was pregnant, and then also when he was just a couple of days old, that confirmed that he did have the extra fluid in his brain. They still weren't sure what that would mean. We had neurologists come in and talk to us, and none of them really could give us much of an idea of kind of what we were in store for. They didn't mention hydrocephalus, which since then he's been diagnosed with that. But they just said the fluid inside his ventricles was more than normal. They were going to keep an eye on it. So I can hear him. He always coos when he hears me talking. So yeah, they just kept an eye on that, and we stayed in the NICU for 2 months after he was born. And he had a surgery in the meantime. We did get sent to Bridgewater for Easter weekend, and we're thankful to be close to home. But I think the day after Easter, they took his NG tube out, and he got quite sick, had pyloric stenosis. So we got shipped back to the IWK, and he had surgery the next day for that. And this was before he was actually supposed to be due. He did okay through that, had transfusion after that. And then when we finally got home, it was his due date. He got discharged on his due date. He's had a shunt put in for his hydrocephalus to drain the fluid. So we had that surgery when he was around 7 months old in September. He was born with extra fingers and toes as well. So he just had a lot of different things that didn't really seem connected, but they seem like they should be connected. So genetics has been following him. And as far as they can tell with the tests that have come back, there's nothing genetically abnormal. All of his chromosomes are normal, which is good. All of his tests, urine tests, blood tests, all that stuff has come back okay. So he's definitely behind where he's supposed to be because he's a year old now, and he's still gaining some strength in his neck to be able to hold his head up because his head was so large when he was born that he's had a really hard time developing the muscles to do that. So it has gotten better since he had his shunt put in, and we're just kind of working on that with him. And he's rolled over a couple of times now, and he starting to reach for toys, and I'm just going to pop the soother in. And he's doing much, much better, but they're going to follow him again in 2 years for genetics. He's also being followed for his eyes because he's got CVI, which is, I'm trying to remember, cortico-visual impairment, they think. There's something kind of mixed about the signal between his eyes and his brain, so they're not quite sure what's going on there. So he's going to have some ongoing challenges for sure, and it's really hard to say what they'll be. He also had something called polymicrogyria, which is when you have some smaller than normal folds in the brain, and he had that in 2 different areas, but again, the neurologist didn't know what that would mean for him because all of the things he has separately are all individually rare and not normally occurring. So the fact that he's got them all together and everything's still kind of, the tests aren't showing anything, I think has a lot of them baffled. And certainly Adam and I have no idea really what to expect. We've kind of learned to just go on Spencer as he's on his own timeline. You know, he's going to sit up when he sits up. He's going to roll when he rolls. We just, as long as he's progressing forward. And that's been a really hard thing for me to let go of, because if you have children, you know, as a mom, you're like, okay, what's the next milestone that's coming, and are they going to meet it at the right time? And with him, there is no right time. So it's been a really difficult thing to kind of let go of that and just realize that he's kind of unique and special and just doing things on his own time. And he has been progressing, so everybody's happy about that. Most of the time I roomed in, so 24 hours a day I was there and would come over and feed him through the night and stuff. Just trying to be as hands-on as I could, because for me this was a completely unnatural circumstance, and I was used to having my babies and then going home and looking after them. And when you're in the NICU, God love them, they're absolutely wonderful, but you feel like a visitor with your baby. You don't feel like you're looking after them. You feel like they're the ones looking after him because he needs more than what you can give him. And it's a really hard feeling to kind of come to terms with. So I had a really hard time while I was in there, and also for probably about 6 months at home, just with a little bit of, I think, post-traumatic stress disorder, just trying to cope with everything. Because when you're living in the NICU, it's like you're in a bubble, you're in a different reality. And then when you come out into the real world, it's a hard adjustment to make. It's really hard. So things have settled out now, but it was a good 6 months being at home before I kind of started to feel like myself, and we were able to get into a bit of a routine here. But it would be nice. Now, we were talking about it the last time she was here, and it would be really helpful, I think, to be able to talk to other parents who can relate to what you're going through, because it's just, like I said, it's a completely different experience from the first 2 times. And it's a little intimidating to go into, I guess, the normal baby groups when your baby isn't doing what all the other babies are doing, and, you know, having to explain what's going on. And sometimes it was a little bit difficult to see babies that are his age, a year old, and, you know, all the things that he should be doing, but that he's not doing yet. And so I have kind of stayed away from that for that reason. But I am starting to cope better with his like he doesn't have a really a diagnosis, and that's difficult too. So I don't, I'm a nurse, so I like to have research, I like to have knowledge, and I don't have that with him. I have a lot of separate little things that even the doctors can't piece together, so I certainly can't piece them together. But it's that's been a little bit harder too, because I can't just say, well, my son has this and this is what we do for it. So we're just with him, it's kind of a day by day, and we're just playing it by ear. And I'm not a play it by ear kind of person, so it's tricky. But yes, we are gonna connect with some families. She said there's one in particular of another family where the mom is a nurse and she has a baby. I don't know what age that baby is, but she's gonna try to connect us together, and I think it will be nice to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
For him just to continue to grow and learn and develop, and just to have all the resources available that he does, so that he can live to his biggest potential. I think he's got a lot of surprises in store for people. And my wish really is just that I can be here and support him 100% of the time and all along the way, and just see what kind of a boy he grows into, because I think he is going to do big things. I think he's here for a reason.